Tony.
Allison, the National Rifle Association has been silent since Friday's deadly mass shooting. In fact, its Facebook page has disappeared. It's not sent a message on Twitter since the extent of the carnage became clear. And no NRA leaders appeared on Sunday talk shows. During past crises, the nation's largest gun rights group has defended the rights of gun owners. Gun control laws and the push for reform are hot-button issues with many Americans, but some lawmakers do not appear eager to take up legislation for change. Joining us now is Jonathan Strong, who covers House leadership for Roll Call. Good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
Let's start with, first of all, those on the Hill who have stepped out and said, all right, it is time to consider change, because among those are some who have previously had A ratings from the National Rifle Association.
Right. Yeah, this tragedy was kind of so horrific. I think you're seeing quite a bit of movement from some of the people that traditionally would be opposed to any new regulations, would have been in the last 10 years. People are really looking at this issue closely. At the same time, there's some very significant hurdles, for at least for congressional action, including the Republican-controlled House. John Boehner and his colleagues are going to be opposed to this. And also in the Senate, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is a strong ally of the NRA.
So let me ask you this. The president, in his statement so far, seems to be indicating that he's ready to talk about this and get some movement on the gun control issue. Will he have much influence over a Republican House?
Well, you know, there's a couple different ways he can have influence. One is the bully pulpit. When he talks to the public, he can mobilize public opinion in a way that at some points, you know, the Republican House could no longer oppose him. I doubt that's going to happen here. What I expect, an informed analysis, a prediction going forward, is that he'll end up making some changes administratively. He has powers as president. He can change the regulations on background checks and the like, and he can essentially go around Congress that way.
What about in the Senate? You've got Mark Warner, who has come out now saying it's time that we do something. Senator Manchin from West Virginia,
right,
also speaking out. What are the chances of this being taken up in the Senate?
You know, it could happen. They had a vote about a year ago where 58 senators voted to extend concealed carry law. So, I mean, that you're showing there a very broad base of support for gun rights. The public opinion polls prior to Newtown show that the public generally supports, you know, pretty vigorous gun rights in a broad sense. So maybe they will, but, you know, you've got the top Democrat there who's a top NRA ally.
Is part of it that right now this is fresh, it's horrific,
right,
it's little children, but as news cycles go, you know, we're about to have the holidays. Obviously, people will remember these kids, but for the politicians on the Hill, they're going to theoretically get a break, maybe not because of the fiscal cliff, but this will die down. I'm sorry to say that, but it likely will. The farther away you get from it, is it likely that people will fall back into their old positions? I'm talking particularly about the politicians on the Hill when it comes to this.
Right, and you know, each tragedy tends to have that kind of cycle where at the very beginning everyone is talking about it all the time. It's a huge issue of concern, and it has a kind of half-life where that attention tends to deteriorate. But each incident is unique in the sense that some have a more lasting impact. Like, for instance, September 11th had a very, very lasting impact on how we look at terrorism. And some other disasters have had less of an impact.
Now, conversely, you mentioned that in some polls before Newtown, many people support, generally speaking, gun rights. If the polls indicate that this has kind of turned the American people, and those polls remain consistent over a period of time, would that have an impact on Congress?
Oh, sure. I mean, you know, these guys didn't get elected by ignoring all the polls all the time. I mean, they're definitely paying attention to public opinion. Absolutely.
All right. I want to turn our attention very quickly to the fiscal cliff. There does look like there maybe has been some movement as attention has been away from the fiscal cliff and more focus on the tragedy last week. Do you think it's more likely that we might get a deal?
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of movement, and, you know, President Obama issued a counteroffer yesterday. There's a big test happening in just an hour or so. John Boehner is going to meet with the Republican conference, his rank and file members, and for the first time since the news came out that he has put a tax rate increase on the table. Now, if they revolt and protest and tell him that that's unacceptable, the talks could really bog down and even fall apart. If they kind of say, oh, well, you did the best you can, then we could see a deal coming together pretty quickly, I think.
Okay, we'll know soon. Jonathan Strong with the Roll Call. Thanks for coming in. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yep. Allison, back to you.